A U.S. government delegation headed by the Consul General in Nigeria has been visiting Baramatu in Warri South local government area of Delta State on a fact-finding mission. According to the delegation, the tour is geared towards facilitating a sustainable peace and development in the Niger Delta region. Meanwhile, one of the communities in the area is protesting against Chevron for the non-electrification of its community, which is less than 2 kilometers from the flow station.
A rare visit. The U.S. Consul General in Baramatu Kingdom, a kingdom in Warri Southwest local government area of Delta State. They are on an assessment tour of the community which hosts American oil multinational Chevron. The first port of call is the palace of the Pere of Baramatu Kingdom, where both parties agree to work together.
In spite of the huge resources generated from oil and gas, which are used for the development of other parts of the country, there is no healthcare facilities, no adequate educational infrastructure, no functional light and electricity in spite of the numerous oil and gas flow stations surrounding Baramatu Kingdom from where gas turbines will be built to give light to the communities.
I respect this document. I appreciate receiving it. But we are here to visit communities and walk the ground and see with our eyes some of the things you talk about in this document.
From the palace, the delegation moves to the Maritime University in Okirinkoko to assess the facility. On the other side of the kingdom is Koko Diagbene, and the people are using the visit of the Consul General to vent their long-time frustration from the oil companies.
It's taking 19 years now that they have been deceiving us. So what we need this today is that let them give us light. They have been giving other people.
I will pass your message to my for further action.
Members of the community are hopeful that this visit will have a positive impact on the oil major and the U.S. government's decision to effect changes in their community.
Former President Goodluck Jonathan says the solution to the violence in the Niger Delta is true and fiscal federalism and not the interventionist agencies such as the Niger Delta Development Commission. Dr. Jonathan said this during a meeting with the United States House Subcommittee on Threats of Religious Intolerance in Nigeria and the Niger Delta Question. According to a statement by the former president's media aide, Dr. Jonathan was invited to speak in his capacity as chairman of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation. He also hinges solution to the continued ethnic and religious violence in parts of Nigeria, especially the southern Kaduna crisis and the killings, on the implementation of the resolution of the 2014 National Conference. While identifying impunity as a factor that contributes to the recurrence of such violence, Dr. Jonathan says he supports the 2014 National Conference's recommendation for an independent religious equity commission to address issues of ethnic and religious violence. Let me hand you over to Gloria Mezoke in Abuja now for more on the news at 10. Hi, Gloria.
Thank you, Amarachi. The acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoge, has asked Nigerians not to put pressure on President Muhammadu Buhari to appoint a substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria. The acting CJN today, through a statement from his office, says Nigerians should allow President Muhammadu Buhari a free hand to perform his constitutional duties concerning the appointment of a substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria. Justice Onoge believes that the president does not need any threat or ultimatum to perform his constitutional duties and therefore dissociate himself from those individuals and groups making such demands on the president. President Buhari swore in Justice Onoge as acting CJN on Thursday, November 10, 2016, an appointment which will expire on Friday, February the 10th, and is not renewable under the law. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Isse Sage, has made a case for a close vetting of candidates for the position of Chief Justice of Nigeria at the presidential level. In an interview with our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shuyele, Professor Sage says the president has to determine for himself if the recommendation of an appointee for the position is in order. He adds that this has become necessary owing to the absence of merit, corruption, and a lack of due diligence on the part of the National Judicial Council.
Somebody is appointed a judge of the High Court. He marks his time. He behaves well. He doesn't offend anybody. He goes to the Court of Appeal. Does the same thing there. He goes to the Supreme Court. And then, depending on his age, he can calculate when he will be Chief Justice of Nigeria. That's an insult on this country. There's no talk of merit. There's no talk of character. There's no talk of integrity. There's no talk of knowledge. There's no talk of skill. Nothing. He just flows like someone on an escalator, going up without any question. That is not good enough for a country of this complexity. I think the whole process that we are seeing now is that of proper vetting, proper studying, and so on. And I really think this country should allow the process to be complete without all this hysteria, blackmail, frenzy everywhere.
And as part of measures to ensure speedy administration of justice, the Chief Judge of the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Justice Ishaq Bello, is seeking increased funding of the judiciary. Justice Bello, who was speaking at the presentation of the draft strategy for the effective implementation of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, said most Nigerian judges are overworked. He explained that with more funding, additional judges will be employed, thereby ensuring speedy dispensation of justice.
The Administration of Criminal Justice Act, passed into law in 2015, is aimed at fast-tracking the dispensation of justice. 1 year after the passage of the Act, the Chief Judge of the Federal Capital Territory High Court blames the lack of funds for the effective implementation of the Act.
Effective case management can only come about where you can determine readily period of investigation. You cannot achieve effective case management when the only thing is to get order for remand and you keep on adjournment, and meanwhile the age of the case is building before the court. As rightly observed by the SAN, the man in the street does not understand what is happening. It's the judge or the court. Unless hands are on deck, everybody plays his own role timely and promptly. No matter what magic you employ to attain effective case management, you cannot achieve that.
The President, Center for Socio-Legal Studies, advocates an effective criminal justice system which is capable of discouraging crimes and antisocial behavior.
We know too well that the passing of the law is one thing, and its effective implementation is another thing altogether. Unfortunately, we as a people, Nigerians, cannot boast of an enviable track record in the enforcement of our laws. Our statute books are replete with many well-crafted laws that are yearning for proper application. There are too many hindrances, including constitution-related barriers to the effective implementation of our laws.
The draft strategy for the implementation of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act is an outcome of the collaborative efforts between the Center for Socio-Legal Studies and several justice sector practitioners aimed at fast-tracking the dispensation of justice in Nigeria.
200 of the Nigerian Air Force contingent sent for peacekeeping in Banjul, the Gambia, are back home today after what they say is a successful campaign in that country. The officers and men who arrived at about 6:30 this evening were part of the ECOWAS military force sent to restore democracy in the Gambia. The officers and airmen were received by Air Vice Marshal James Boom at the Air Force wing of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos. Former President Yahya Jammeh had refused to step down after losing election to current President Adama Barrow, defying all efforts by the ECOWAS negotiating team led by Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. The armed forces from Nigeria, Senegal and other ECOWAS member countries were eventually deployed to force Jammeh out if he remained adamant.
These are not drums of war, but a felicitation at the Nigerian Air Force wing of the Murtala Mohammed Airport, Lagos. It's the arrival of the air wing component of the military personnel deployed to enforce democracy and the rule of law in the Gambia in the wake of former President Yahya Jammeh's reluctance to relinquish power. On hand to receive them is the Chief of Policy and Planning, Air Vice Marshal James Boom, who represented the Chief of Air Staff alongside top officers of the command. While relaying the country's goodwill message to the troops, Air Vice Marshal James Boom applauds the gallantry of the personnel.
Your cooperation and coordination with sister services, as well as other friendly forces from other nations that constituted the ECOWAS mission in the Gambia, are also highly commendable. We are glad that democratic order has been preserved in the Gambia and stability of the country has been sustained. On behalf of the Chief of the Air Staff and the entire Nigerian Air Force family, I want to thank you all for a job well done.
The head of the contingent, Air Commander Tajuddin Yusuf, says the troop has played its role to restore democracy in the Gambia, and it's now left for political leaders to ensure its sustenance.
As at the time we went into the State House and the personal house of former President Yahya Jammeh, I think he was actually very prepared for the war, but for the air power show that scared him, and I think that took control of everything.
It's been 3 weeks since these men left for Senegal, Dakar, to enforce the ECOWAS mandate for the Gambia. Well, the mission has been adjudged successful, and now the first batch of about 20 officers and 77 airmen has arrived the country. While the remaining of the 200 contingents are expected back in the country, the need to ensure that political and economic stability in Gambia and other parts of the ECOWAS region is protected must be given the desired attention. Chris Elams, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, an Abuja High Court has ruled that the plans by the Federal Capital Territory Authority to demolish houses in Mpape, a settlement in Abuja, the nation's capital, is wrong and illegal. The court held that the action was undertaken without following due process and statutory requirements of the law. Justice Abubakar Kutigi, who handed down the judgment, says government cannot demolish the settlement until it has fully complied with the law. Our correspondent Amaka Okafo reports.
This is Mpape, a suburb in the Federal Capital Territory. It is a subject of dispute between the residents and the Federal Capital Development Authority. The Federal Capital Territory Development Authority had in July 2012 planned to demolish the settlement on the ground that it was not in the Federal Capital Territory Master Plan. This prompted the residents to approach the court to stop the demolition. Judgment Day, anxious residents await the verdict of the court. While some carried placards, the tired ones answered the call of nature, while these school children waited anxiously for the judgment. Some of the residents who spoke to Channels Television expressed hope that the judgment will be in their favor.
We are there since 20-something years, even some 30 years. We want them to allow us to stay in our place. It's our place, it's Nigeria.
We are expecting them to give us to free us in the Mpape.
And just like they expected, respite came their way. Justice Abubakar Kutigi said the failure of the Federal Capital Development Authority to issue statutory notices in compliance with the provisions of the law and due process before embarking on actions aimed at demolishing the properties was unlawful.
court has given judgments in this particular matter today, being the 2nd day of February 2017, to the effect that there cannot be any demolition within the 5 capital territory of Abuja, Pape inclusive, without adherence to due process of the law, as in the statutory notices of the law, the eviction notices, the conservation notices, stop work orders, and other notices must be served on any dweller in a place if it is so believed that that person or those areas are being occupied by people without due allocation and approval. In this particular case, such notices were not effected on our client.
And as words filtered into the community on the verdict of the court, residents took to the streets in excitement. It is not clear whether the Federal Capital Development Authority will appeal the judgment, but for now, these joyful residents can only go back and hope that they can keep their homes. Amaka Okafor, Channels Television News.